So I met Tim we had coffee about 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. And we were talking about this, and he said, well, I do video marketing and stuff for a lot of doctors and dentists and that type of profession. And he said, I'm going to be in town. I'd be willing to bring my stuff, because he asked me where was Scott, because Scott is, he's kind of stepped down. So we talked about it, and so Tim stepped up and said, thank you for what you're doing for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I started coming here last year and thought it was so great to have the video of all the presentations that everyone did here over the years. So I wanted to definitely keep that going.
Now, so just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of background. Where are you from? How'd you get started in this business?
Sure. So I am originally from California, but I moved here when I was 3 to Florida. And I lived all around the state. Grew up in Fort Lauderdale and came back for college, went around the state and came back for college at FAU in Boca Raton. And all this really got started really in high school when I wanted to be a race car driver. So, with that, what do you see race car drivers? They need sponsors, they need fans, they need an email list, they need a website, they need to promote themselves. So that's originally got started as a teenager when I was like 15, 16 years old, and built all my little things that I had, little newsletter and website and things like that. And then at FAU, I was there building race cars with Formula SAE, if anyone's in engineering and knows what that is. I built those and helped out with the team with their website and sponsors and all that. And just found doing all those different things that the digital marketing stuff is what I really enjoyed. And just kept doing that. Worked for some serial entrepreneurs. I worked for a doctor full-time for a few years. And now I'm out on my own. I started last year on my own, and I work a lot in the medical field. I have a lot of knowledge with that. And I just love helping people with YouTube. YouTube is a thing that I really love. I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand the impact it really has. It can have for the right people and the right businesses.
That's great. And it's just you right now, right? You're a solopreneur?
I'm solopreneur. I have some people that help me with the editing and different things, but it's all me. Here in Orlando, I go out and film for my clients here. I also can fly out and film for whoever needs me around the country. But that's a little bit extra fee because of the flight and the extra days and stuff.
Of course, daily expenses. So you talk about working with doctors and other stuff. So what's a core problem you would say that you're solving for them, and how do you know it's making a difference?
So, one of the especially with doctors, one of the first things I do is make sure that they're able to get Google reviews. A lot of people kind of don't put a big emphasis on that, and I think that's something that's very, very important, and something that's definitely a differentiating factor in that community, because not everyone is doing that, and there's very simple things you can do to implement that, because a lot of times they already have a texting system and an email system for their patients. So there's very simple things that you can do to get started and do that, and that's very easy to measure because you can see if they're getting more Google reviews. As far as video, the biggest thing is outside of doing training videos and things in the office, when you do public videos that really answer your customers' questions and pain points that they have, which they really know because they see patients every day. It can really help them, when people have those and the patients have those and they can share them with other people, it's a great tool to have for them to utilize for the community.
Okay, and that's great. And so how are you different than the competition? Why would somebody want to call you to have you come do that for them versus ABC or whoever?
Well, what really makes me different, I feel my experience in the industry which a lot of the companies don't normally specialize with medical and don't have the experience of working in an office and understanding, the dynamics of a medical office, which are pretty different. And as far as, with YouTube, I just have a ton of experience with the platform and kind of understand that very well, because there's a difference. A lot of people wrap YouTube into like social media and everything else, but it's a very different platform, and it's there's a lot of nuances that people don't really understand about it, that it takes some time to really understand the power that you have with it.
That's great. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but what's a turning point in your past that really made you decide entrepreneurship was the way to go and not working for somebody else?
A big part of it, the first thing that comes to mind is just is really the freedom that it gives you. But with that freedom becomes a lot of responsibility, right? So that was a big part of it. And it was, again, I work for serial entrepreneurs, and I think for me, it was just time to try to do something on my own, because I just have that kind of inkling inside me to want to do that, for a long time. And that's kind of what I just decided, that it's time now to go do it and give it a shot.
That's it. That's perfect. And there's a key in there that you don't want to miss, okay? Jim Rohn always said, you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around with most. Who did he say he hung around with? Serial entrepreneurs. He wanted to emulate what he saw happening because he saw success there. So who you hang around with matters, all right? So that's important. And Jim Rohn also said, if he said about every 6 months, one of your friends is going to kind of drop out. They get married, life changes, they move, whatever. He said you need to be very selective at picking the next person that you want to fill that spot. So who do you want to hang around with? So when you think about it, what type of income do you want to make? Where do you want to get to in your life? What do you want to do? Are you talking to people that have experience and expertise in what you're doing? Or are you talking to Uncle Joe, whose profession is pushing buttons on the couch, right? So that's really critical to do that. That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's a huge reason why I'm doing what I'm doing here and dedicating my time and bringing, I heard today, well, that's a lot of equipment. Well, that gets us all together. That gets, the proper people together to be here, right? So
what is it that gets you out of bed every day to get up and do what you do? What's your why?
My why, I love helping people, right? And I love getting the right people together. And with what I do, YouTube really does a great job of that when you do it right. Because YouTube really helps you, because people don't really think about YouTube as a search engine, but it's the second biggest search engine in the world behind Google, right? And there's stuff happening with AI, and stuff is changing a bit, but people still go to YouTube to answer their questions. And if you're able to be there and answer people's questions in the right way, it gets the right people together. And everything what I do with video, whether it be public videos or training videos and stuff, it gets people to understand to be more efficient in the office and everything that goes along with that. It's just such a powerful tool to have and use.
So doing videos, I'm sure you've had some blooper reels and stuff. What's one of
Hopefully none today.
Well, what's one of the funniest things, or share a funny story with us of something that happened?
Oh boy, you're really putting me on the spot. Now I got to think of something. Oh man. What? Orlandopreneur? No, those are always great events. Orlandopreneur
So
always
how
is great
about,
events.
how about we'll go to this question
Yeah.
and maybe that'll tickle your.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so describe your ideal client to us. If we're out and we're talking to somebody and they say, you know, I'm interested in blah, 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 like Peter said last week, I know a farmer. What's
Yeah.
an ideal client for you?
So an ideal client for me is really, I mean, someone like Peter, or in that realm who has a business, it's established. They really understand the customer. They understand, who they are and what they're doing, and they, can present and be a good speaker. That helps a lot right now to be able to do that. And then from there, I'm really the person that can help develop the strategies that need to happen to find those questions that the customers have and really help answer them effectively, with the YouTube side. And then with the business side, it would be someone obviously more established, an established company who has, probably 10 to 30 employees who needs more organization and want some training videos done so they don't have to repeat themselves in every staff meeting, and they can go on and have some videos for the new staff that they have, different things like that. So that's pretty much it.
Training videos,
Yeah.
you gotta love
Yeah.
them. We'll get to questions in a minute. So go back to, so did you think of a funny?
No.
Okay, then we'll come back to that.
I don't have
And
one
then,
of those.
what do you find is the most effective way for you right now to market your business? What are you doing?
The most effective way for me is I'm focusing a lot on my local community here in Orlando. So coming out and going to networking events and meeting local people is great. Orlandopreneurs is one of them. A Million Cups here are two great organizations here in Orlando that I go to, and that's a lot of what I'm focusing on. I will be also having my own videos come out on YouTube as well, talking about different things with digital marketing. So that's another thing I'm going to be doing to help along with that.
All right, so that's great. Okay, so now we'll ask some questions. We'll start with our guest back here.
What's your biggest challenge right now as a solopreneur?
Biggest challenge is, being a solopreneur is still you're the one doing everything, right? You have to be able to start taking stuff off your plate, understand what you're really good at and what you need to offload that's really just taking up your time. And that's just very hard to do when you're just in the weeds on everything still. So there needs to be, a way for you to really see, what's really moving the business, what is really, getting clients and meeting people versus, just sitting there and doing all the busy work, which you're working, but it's not really advancing, where you need to be and what you need to do to really, get to the next level, right? There's levels, when you're an employee and then you're self-employed, right? Like I would still call myself more self-employed than an entrepreneur because I don't really have employees in like a full business. So I'm in that transition to where, moving from that, doing everything to having some people to help me work on different aspects of the business.
Build a system and systematize, Tony.
So how long did you say you've been working with YouTube as a content engine?
I've been working with YouTube, I would say in the weeds, like full-time every day, probably about 4 years. But I've been utilizing it ever since, high school. With,
Where I was going with this is, if you were to consult to a startup, right, a small company, I mean, what I'm seeing, let me just ask the question, sorry.
Sure.
I do this to myself, right? You already answered the question or you proposed it. Anyway, if you're consulting with a company that has very little presence, has produced a couple of videos or all, what do you recommend them? One, continue to produce content and maybe they'll come, or work on promoting and paying for promotion to supplement the organic growth?
right. So with a startup company, I think it goes back to you still need to really understand your customer because you need to understand what they're going to watch and what they're going to respond to, right? Because you can throw a lot of stuff out there, but in my opinion, you need to know what their pain points are so you can answer them. So that I think is the biggest thing. If you have that established, there's a lot you can do on your own, depending on your team and what you're doing. You don't need to have, in my opinion, you don't need to have highly produced, especially with YouTube, highly produced, over edited kind of content like that. I think, and all the algorithms to me are, what's really working is authenticity. So being more authentic and just showing who you are and how you solve the problem and doing that and not overcomplicating it helps a lot. Because a lot of times when people get started in any kind of social media, they want to, really go over the top and do, a lot of stuff. But I think keeping it simple really, really helps. But sometimes it takes time to get there, right? You need to put stuff out, you need to do stuff, look and see what's working, and then kind of go back and do the stuff that works, and then, you kind of figure that out along the way, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
It does to a point.
Okay.
I agree with where you were saying with that. But, part of it is I see is, the company I represent, I spoke about last week, creates a software product, right? So there's several different ways to use YouTube for promotion, right? One is education and training, just like you were getting at.
Right.
And of course, that's not building a viral moment that's going to get you millions of customers, but it's going to produce content, whether it's also written and obviously audio visual, to help augment your customer base. Second, like I said, is, but from a sales perspective and again, growth, and this is where I was going with it, because, whether it's that, whether it's Twitter or search engine marketing versus search engine optimization,
Right.
Drives that. And I just, that's a question I typically ask, because usually the fallback mechanism is, yeah, let's spend thousands of dollars for you. With that, of course, creating a campaign that's highly addressing your point, which is your ideal client profile, and focusing on that.
Right. I'll give an example. An example popped in my head. I'll talk about the example, but the thing with with startups, it's hard because cash is so tight, right? It's a lot different than an established company that has the money to spend on professional video coming out and filming and doing that. So you have to be very selective with what you do, and that's why I think it's very important to have such a a really good understanding of who you are. And the example that popped in my head for YouTube specifically, a lot of people think they need to have viral videos in hundreds of tens of thousands, 100,000, millions of views, which helps to a point when you're when you're at that point. But an example that popped in my head was somebody who has does boats and does boating installation of audio video equipment, and he had a video specifically on one piece of equipment, right? And it had I don't know, a couple hundred views or something, but that was so specific and it answered someone's question that he got an email from somebody about that device, and he got a client out of it just because he was the one knowledgeable enough on that particular device, right? So a lot of people focus on the viral side, but I don't necessarily think that that's something that is the right thing to focus on when you really understand and focus on your customers, because he's never going to have millions of views, right? Because of what his company is and what it is, but he's able to communicate and get in front of the right people just by, answering his customers' questions.
That's great. So it's funny you mentioned SEO. An SEO expert walked into a bar, pub, tavern. Okay, but Denny.
You've got a tremendous background in the medical industry. Have you thought about approaching the most competitive marketplace as one of we got here is health?
Yeah.
You've got a lot of huge hospitals. Have you thought about approaching the hospitals about marketing your physicians, or specifically what they specialize in?
I haven't really approached the hospitals, You know, I've had more experience with smaller, medium-sized companies. When you get to the
Find that they've got a certain amount of money they have to spend every year, so you're perfect for them too.
right, okay, that's something I need to look into for sure. Thank you.
Sean?
You have all the talent and skills and desire, skilling, everything you got it. So you have to decide what you want to be when you're successful.
He wants to be a race car driver.
Yeah.
So easy to deal with, we talk about it, right? And marketing point of view, word of mouth, period. You don't have to spend a penny.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best marketing right now, anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And you can do that. And you want to be a visionary leader. And you delegate, learn to delegate. That's one of it. And
Right.
you create leaders under you, not the followers.
Right.
It's very easy, and you are very easy to mentor. So I'll help you out.
Okay.
Okay.
So, last two questions. So, if you could give your past self a piece of advice before you start, what would that be?
Piece of advice before I started.
Yeah. Your person today.
No, you say don't do it, but I would say, it's taken a lot for me to kind of get over that fear, right? Because I've done so much with all I've done that fear, I'm just now starting to overcome in my 30s, right? And it's just my personality and how my brain's kind of wired. But I would say, you can do it, just like Sean was saying. Like, you can do it. Like, you are talented enough.
Anything you can do.
Right.
You start right here.
I still gotta say anything. But it's very true. It does start all in the mind, and that is something that I just personally struggled with. That I'm still, we're all still working on. But it's something that, held me back a lot, and to have that confidence to know, I'm smart enough to do what I want to do and do anything is something that I would definitely tell myself when I was younger, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And critical piece there, know your client, right? That's important. So many people that you talk to, they ask you, who's your ideal client? Oh, everybody. Well, no, everybody is not your client. And having underwritten a lot of commercial lending and people coming in to do that, when you sit down and you look at their financial projections and you go, how did you come up with this number? They go, well, there's this many people that are doing business there, and I figured if I can get 1% or 0.5%, it's like, wrong, see you later, go get it done. You need to know your numbers, you need to know your client, and you need to know your target audience. Where are you starting? So like I'm working with a gentleman right now at UCF. His target audience is UCF, UF in Tampa, and a college where he has a friend of his who works with him in Jacksonville. So we know that target, and we're helping him work through that target. So that's important to know that. So last question, what can we, as the Orlando chapter of 1 Million Cups, do to help you?
Well, come here in person and network and meet everybody and meet me. I'm here. And you can go to driven.com. I have that. We're going to have a website up here in the next couple weeks. Built for that, and you can find me.
DR1VEN.
So yes, it's Driven Digital, DR1VEN, and .com. So DR1VEN.com. That's the web address. I have a contact form on there now, and you can follow me on. You can find me on social media. My name's Tim Bambu. I'm on there. I don't post a lot, but oh yes, BAMBU. I don't post a lot, but you can connect with me there and message me if you have any questions about YouTube or video content, things like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.